play the devil's advocate here for a moment. Let's say that Boston College beats Clemson today. Notre Dame beats Florida State. Does Notre Dame move up to number 2?
I don't know. I think if everybody handles their business today, I think everything stays exactly the same. I don't think there's any reason to move pieces around at this point. Notre Dame, their strength of schedule's been better this year. They've got the win against Michigan head to head. That's what will be interesting. If Michigan and Notre Dame both wind up with one loss, how does the committee look at that? Do they factor in the head to head, or do you factor in when they lost and who they lost to? So that could be the fun part coming down to the end. If Notre Dame does have a loss, let's say they lose to USC, do they Michigan finishes with one loss? How do they factor that in with Michigan's one loss being against Notre Dame? So that's where some fun could wind up. The fun will be to see who winds up at 5, 6, and 7 this week, because those are the teams just waiting to pounce on one of those top 4 spots. The fun is going to start to happen in that 5, 6, and 7 spot.
Well, let's move back over to the NFL. Obviously, the Chargers 6-2 at Oakland 1-7 might have a situation there. I know the NFL is monitoring that situation. There's some fires up in Northern California, but as we talked about, the gig is up. The Oakland Raiders have officially let everybody know they're taken for 2019. So fire or no fire, there's not going to be any fire on the field against the Los Angeles Chargers. Still want to say San Diego Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know that it's all 100% taken. I think this team's terrible. On top of it, I think John Gruden has ticked off a lot of people in the locker room. I think that, here's the thing about it. You can have a ton of draft picks and build through the draft, but you have to have a history of drafting good. And I think that's where they could struggle, because Gruden hasn't been the best drafter. So I think that accumulating all these picks is great if you've got a front office that can use them correctly. If you have a guy like John Dorsey in Cleveland, who used the draft very well last year to help start to build this football team in Cleveland. So the Raiders are partly taken and partly just terrible all around. The Chargers are continuing to get better on offense each and every week. They've had some devastating injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but when Joey Bosa comes back, I think you're going to see this Chargers team just be a force to be reckoned with.
The Packers are having such a terrible year, 3-4-1, and the Dolphins are starting to turn things around. Did we really think we were going to be talking about the Dolphins being able to beat the Packers? And this is not the time of year that we want the Dolphins to be making a turn, because the Indianapolis Colts are going to be facing them soon too. Dolphins seem to be doing something right. What's going on in Packerland?
Some tough losses at times, some bad decisions, and a hobbled Aaron Rodgers, since week 1. The Dolphins have a decent record, but it's smoke and mirrors in my estimation. They've lost games that they shouldn't have lost, and they've beaten teams that they're supposed to beat who are bad teams. So, to me, this Miami Dolphins team is not good. It's smoke and mirrors as far as that goes. And the Packers, they've had a tough schedule. They've lost games to the Rams, and and they've got a pretty stout NFC division to play. So I think it's just a combination of the Packers don't have a ton of great personnel on offense. I think that it's partly Aaron Rodgers' injury, and I think there's some turmoil there between Aaron Rodgers and the head coach Mike McCarthy and the front office. So I think that all factors into it. The Packers, obviously, like you said, having a year that we didn't expect, but don't cut it out, because they're definitely a team that could be wrecking some playoff futures of teams coming the end of the season.
Let's talk a little. We'll revisit the game that Ed and I talked about earlier, and that is the Falcons and the Browns. The Browns have not won since week 5, and the Falcons have not lost since week 5. The Browns are playing with an interim coach. They're playing at home. They need a statement win, but Matt Ryan is pretty hot. What are your thoughts about the Falcons coming into Cleveland Browns? Again, that week 5 has something in common. The Falcons haven't lost since week 5, and the Browns haven't won since week 5.
Well, I think it's going to be the key to the game is going to be on the offensive line of Cleveland being able to give Baker Mayfield time for this offense to keep up with Atlanta. Cleveland has a bunch of injuries on defense, especially in the defensive backfield. So I think that's going to hurt them trying to slow down this Falcons offense. So it's going to be up to Baker Mayfield, that offense, to be able to keep up. And we saw last week that the offensive line just was not giving Baker time to try to keep up with that Kansas City offense. So to me, The key is going to be the offensive line. Can they get better this week and give Baker more time on offense to try to keep up? Defensively, Cleveland's got some issues as far as that secondary and a few of the linebacking core. So, trying to get healthy by tomorrow will be a key for the defense. But that offensive line giving Baker Mayfield time and the integrating Duke Johnson back into the lineup, back into the offense. I think you saw, with Duke Johnson having 2 touchdowns last week, it was I couldn't believe that Todd Haley wasn't using him, basically at all. While he was the offensive coordinator. So I think that'll help Baker too, is being able to throw those short passes to Duke Johnson this week as well. So it'll just all be, can they keep up with Atlanta's offense? Atlanta's offense has been on a tear, like you said. So it should be a fun game, but if Atlanta gets out to a couple touchdown lead, that's where things will start to look bleak for the Cleveland Browns.
I think everybody agrees the Los Angeles Rams are the real Los Angeles team this year. Who would have thought it? But they're the best in the NFL right now. They're just checking off boxes. They're going to be in the Super Bowl. I mean, if you just want to look at the trend that they're at now, obviously things change a lot in the playoffs. People play a lot differently. The Rams haven't been there in a while, but we'll see what happens. But the Seahawks are just mediocre at best, as we have said before. He'd be really good or he'd be really bad. Don't be mediocre, and that's exactly what the Seattle Seahawks are. Los Angeles Rams are at home against the Seahawks. They just check off a box tomorrow.
Yeah, but it's a game I think betting-wise I would stay away from. It's a 9-point spread, which you remember that the last game it came down to the wire when they played Seattle earlier this year. So I think the Rams win the football game. I think they bounced back from the loss last week at New Orleans. And to me, it's an important game for the Rams as well, because at this point, I think the NFC could come down to who has home field advantage in the playoffs. So it's important for the Rams to keep pace by winning this football game. I don't know that I would bet the Rams this game because of a 9-point spread, but I definitely think the Rams win this football game.
Let's revisit a game that Ed and I talked about earlier. Quite obviously we did, and that is this rivalry, this game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. Jimmy, Cowboys owner, came out this week and said, Dak Prescott is our quarterback. He's going to get an extension. Well, we'll see what happens. The Philadelphia Eagles are 4-4. The Dallas Cowboys are 3-5. The Philadelphia Eagles, at best, are having a Super Bowl hangover, if you will. They're at home against the Eagles. It doesn't really matter what the record is. Screw the record. This is going to be a bath. It's hostile territory for the Dallas Cowboys to come in. Talk with us a little bit about this game, the Eagles and the Cowboys.
Well, I'm not sure what Ed's feelings were on it, but to me, I think, with Sean Lee out again for Dallas at linebacker, I think that the Eagles can score points. And I think the big difference is that you've got a team in Dallas who played, last week late, and you've got a team in Philadelphia who was off and had a chance to work, more with Golden Tate and factor him into the offense. So they acquired him at a perfect time. I think Dallas continues to have trouble making plays on the field in the passing game. And, when the Eagles defense can key 80% of their time on Ezekiel Elliott, I think Dak's going to have to make plays to guys like Amari Cooper and Cole Beasley in order to try to win this football game, because I think it's going to be another game where Dallas is going to have to try to keep up, their offense is going to have to try to keep up with Philadelphia's offense. And I think Philadelphia can score and probably score a lot on this Dallas defense. I like Philadelphia in this game by at least a touchdown.
One more final game, and then we'll get into a little bit of NBA talk before we have to wrap it up and put a bow on it. Which team sucks more? The New York Giants at 1-7 and the San Francisco 49ers at 2-7. I think clearly we're going to see the end of the Eli Manning era, that's for sure. But my gosh, who sucks worse, the New York Giants or the San Francisco 49ers?
Well, if you want to believe Odell Beckham, he thinks they're going to win 8 straight and win the NFC East. So, talent-wise on paper, the Giants should be, in the playoff picture right now because they've got talent and a lot of it. It's just it hasn't come together these last couple of years. They've just been terrible all around. And I think it's the point where they do move on from Eli, but I think they've got other issues as well. And San Francisco rallied around their third-string quarterback last week. And, they've ever since Jimmy Garoppolo went out, they haven't given up on games. They've gotten beaten some games, but they haven't given up, and that's the thing you want to see. That's the difference, I think, between these two teams is the heart. I think San Francisco has heart, and the Giants don't. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Giants win the game, but I think maybe the heart of San Francisco can outmatch what the Giants can do. Talent-wise, I think it definitely swings towards the Giants, but sometimes the heart is a little bit more important, and this San Francisco team definitely has heart.
Let's talk a little bit about sportsmanship in the NBA. Gordon Hayward comes back to Salt Lake City, and he gets booed. I think that was in poor taste, especially if we think back about the huge injury that he had. As we know that he was their superstar. He left. I guess he pulled a Paul George with them and left the Jazz to have a reunion with his college basketball coach, Brad Stevens, at Boston. I think a lot of people would say now that LeBron James is out west, that the East clearly belongs to Boston. But was it right of the fans to just give a huge – I mean, it was so loud that it was over. The announcers were having a hard time being heard because of the boos of Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was okay because when you're a small market team and you have a superstar and the first chance they get that they bolt, I think that pisses people off. They to see the small market teams lose their superstars continually to big markets, I think is frustrating. So, injury or not, I don't see a problem with them booing him yesterday, and I think he probably expected that. It's first chance he got, he was off, and they were building something small and something spectacular there in Utah. They were a team that was doing pretty well in the playoffs with Gordon Hayward on that basketball team. So I can see why they were ticked. And if you imagine having Gordon Hayward on that Utah team now, boy, what a fun team that would be with Donovan Mitchell and Ingles. So I don't blame him one bit for booing him.
So I don't think it's as bad news as a lot of people were thinking at first with Steve Kerr. He left certainly Warrior star, left the Milwaukee Bucks game on Thursday with some sort of a strain. It appears that after the MRI that he's going to be able to come back. But how big of an impact is a loss of Stephen Kerr to the Golden State Warriors, especially whether we like it or not? LeBron James is LeBron James, and he's at the LA Lakers, and we'll see what happens there. But certainly, you would think that the Warriors need guys like Steve Kerr on the floor.
Well, I mean, an abductor strain is not something super terrible, which is what Steph Curry has. But it's so early in the season, and they get so much scoring from so many other places. Right now, I think Steph, missing 5 or 6 games isn't terrible for the Warriors, especially when you got a guy like Kevin Durant, who's probably one of the better scorers, if not the best scorer in the NBA. Klay Thompson went for 50 a week and a half ago. Steph, Draymond Green. And don't forget, come February, you got DeMarcus Cousins coming back for this basketball team as well. So early on in the season, I don't think it's bad. All that matters is that Steph Curry is healthy when come playoff time for the Golden State Warriors.
So final game, I'll let you go. It sounds like you're dealing with the same question that I'm dealing with, that Steve was dealing with. But hey, let's talk about the Pacers. Last year we didn't have any expectations for them at all. They had a great season, and all right. Now they're coming in this season. We have a lot of expectations. Certainly, yes, they shut down the Heat for a late victory, 110-102. But at the same time, I think we need to kind of go back to where we were at the beginning of the season. Last year with the Pacers, have a little bit more patience with them, not get so impatient with the Pacers. A lot of Pacer fans are getting a little antsy. It's still very early.
Well, and you can't get antsy because, Victor Oladipo, as he goes, the Pacers go. He has no other superstar to join him on that basketball team. There are guys who are very good. I mean, Sabonis looks like a complete steal in that Oklahoma trade as well. But, Tyreek Evans can score the basketball. But there's no other superstar on this basketball team like a bunch of these other good teams have. Like Gordon Hayward has a Kyrie and a Tatum. There is none of that with this basketball team. So you've got to give patience because, the other thing is Victor Oladipo still learning how to be a superstar in this league. Last year he broke out. Now he's learning how to be a superstar. And that changes. That changes for guys, and it changes how they play the game. So, as this team goes, they go as Victor Oladipo goes. And so you're right. People have to be patient because they're still a missing piece away from really being a factor, I think, in the East because you look at Toronto, you look at Boston, and those teams have multiple superstars, whereas Indiana has a guy who's still learning how to be a superstar. So, Pacers fans definitely need to be patient. This team's going to be fun. They're quick. They're going to score a lot of points, and they're going to be in every game. But sooner or later, Victor Oladipo is going to to have off nights, and that's going to be bad.